Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. I know it has been quite a long time since my last video. It got to the point where my work was so hectic that I felt I had to give, and unfortunately it meant that I had to put my YouTube on hold, and several other like all my social media basically was like my social online life was non-existent because I was so busy at work and just trying to stay afloat. But anyway, fast forward a few months, I think it's been like 6 months. I quit my job, I left my job. I am now in the process of the next step of what's coming next and trying to figure that out. So until then I figured why not jump back on the bandwagon, and let's get straight into it. I'm not going to talk too much about where I've been. I feel like that is something that's a conversation for another day, but I thought why not come back and continue doing what I love doing. One of the things I love to do the most, which is book reviews. Yay! Today I am reviewing a book that is quite controversial, but not for the book itself, rather the author. And I'm going to explain a little bit more about that in a second, but before I get into it, I'll just introduce the book. It is this book, which is Where the Crawdads Sing, by Delia Owens. So before I go into any further detail about this book and what I thought about it, I feel like I need to put out a disclaimer. I feel like I need to put out a disclaimer. That first of all, I bought this book, I got given this book a couple of years ago on my birthday. Oh my gosh! I'm gonna start reading it like today.
Oh, that's nice.
Oh my gosh. Oh, thank you. I read it before I even heard of anything about the scandal, so I read it. I had already read it. I already had the book before the scandal was brought to light, and then when it was like, are you kidding me? So for those of you who don't know, I'm not going to go into all the details because there's a few other YouTubers. One I think I will link below, maybe if not two, who have gone into more details as to what this scandal entails. So I just feel like, first of all, disclaimer, before myself and the book get cancelled, I had no idea about all of this and what was happening before I bought the book. But I'll go into more detail and then let you know what I think about the book. So basically the author, Delia Owens, who is a zoologist by profession. I don't know if she's got any other qualifications, but I know that she is or was a zoologist for many years. And what caught my attention particularly was the fact that she did a lot of her work in was it Zimbabwe and then in Zambia, and I was like, whoa, this big author, she was working in Zambia back then. Like, that is super duper interesting. However, there were certain things that were brought to light about her work alongside her husband, and basically the whole scandal involves murder and unaccounted crimes. Like, basically her husband had allegedly committed a crime and was never brought to justice, was never served in that case, and that happened right here in Zambia. Like, how scandalous and how utterly crazy is that? So there was a lot of talk about how the book should be cancelled and the author should be cancelled because first of all, she was one of the suspects in a really big crime, but then also the theme of the book is basically, it's also talking about murder in some ways. And so people were saying how there was all this conspiracy about like how the character in the book was being tried for murder, and meanwhile Delia and her husband had also had a sort of a scandal related to murder. So people were saying, is this really fiction, or is it inspired by true events to a certain extent? Who knows? But basically that is the scandal that is around the book, and I'll touch more on that a little bit later. But for now, let me give you my thoughts on this book, and yeah, we'll take it from there. So first of all, talking about the cover, one thing that really got me interested in this book was this beautiful cover. I believe it has two different covers. I have this one, which I think is the better looking one. It's a lot nicer, it's a lot more like, you know, colorful and vibrant, and I just really fell in love with the book for that reason. So this book takes place in, I'll just be looking at my notes, it takes place, I believe, in southern North Carolina. I read the book about a year ago, so I can't remember all the details, but it's basically following this girl and her life. And you know, the book has two major themes that it follows. So one is this girl who is known as the Marsh Girl by the community. So she's basically neglected and left to fend for herself. She has to grow up all by herself. Her family basically abandons her. The community starts to call her the Marsh Girl because she lives in the marsh, and she has to fend for herself basically. And so that's one themes of the story of the book. And the other theme is that basically this girl was then accused of murder. So there was this huge murder case that happened in the community, and so it was being investigated, and she was actually the main suspect. So those are the two themes that go along throughout the book. I think one thing that I really loved, or what really got me interested in the book, was the fact of where it was set. It was set in this beautiful marsh. Well, people didn't tend to see it as a beautiful place, but this girl, growing up there, she saw the beauty in the marsh, and it was talking a lot about like her environment, and I absolutely love that. I mean, coming from Mukushi, being a bush girl, it was completely relatable, and so I was really quite interested in the story. It was quite captivating in that sense for me. I really enjoyed also seeing how this girl basically progressed and how she was able to thrive. It was really good to see how she was able to navigate and grow through all the things that were happening. So, you know, the book is centered on her life and her loss and her love relationships, and so it was a really interesting concept, just trying to understand this girl and where she was coming from and what she was trying to do with herself and where she was trying to go. I also loved how, I think, just tying in with the whole theme of where the book was set, I loved how descriptive it was. The writing was actually really beautiful, and it really made me, it just made you appreciate like the environment, and that's one thing that I loved, just the whole focus and the whole setting. I could picture everything really well, and it felt like we were quite immersed in the story. It was also a very touching book. It's a very lonely situation that the girl was in. There were several moments where I was actually moved to tears because it was almost unbelievable, and it seemed sort of unfair as to why she had to grow up in a place like this and why she had to grow up in these situations. But it could actually be somebody's reality, and so it was quite a heartbreaking situation. Just, you know, some of the things that she went through that were highlighted in the book. For the author, so like I said, Delia Owens, she wrote this book quite recently. She's quite a lot older. She's, I think, 70 years old, give or take. And you know, so she wrote this book. This was her first novel. So she had written other books, but then this was her first novel, and it's actually amazing in that context, the fact that it was her first book, but it was really well written, in my opinion. The ending of the book was surprising. I'm not going to give away spoilers because otherwise it's a bit pointless, because then you're going to know you know, how they solved the murder and so on. I'm not going to dig into that too much, but I feel like the ending was quite surprising. I've heard quite a lot of reviewers talk about how the book towards the end, it just sort of felt like, what on earth is happening? Things sort of unraveled, and I also sort of agree to some extent. Like, the book did take me through. It was quite captivating. It was easy to read through and try and figure, you know, try and solve the murder and try and, you know, think who done it and all that. But it was quite a surprising end. So that's what I'm going to say on the ending of the story. What I would take away from it, so I think one of the things that it brought to light was the fact that, you know, you need to appreciate the environment and how so often things in the environment are overlooked, and you know, like the ecosystems and biodiversity and all that stuff, like if you really don't have an interest in that, then it's easy to overlook what's actually happening in the environment. But I feel like to some extent everyone needs to have that sort of some sort of awareness as to you know, what impact we have on the environment and how we can actually appreciate what it gives us. And so I really like that the book focused quite a lot, like it was set in that sort of setting that would make you, it's quite thought-provoking in some ways. Also, as me being an outsider, being someone who loves to get outside, be in the outdoors, experience nature, I love that the book actually encouraged us to do so, because there's so much to discover out there. And also I feel like the girl, her name is Kaya, I can't believe I've not mentioned her name. So this girl Kaya, you know, she ends up, you know, based on her whole experience in the marsh, she's able to become really successful because she's so passionate about that. And it was really one of those moments that was, you know, kind of like, you know, go after your dreams, don't sit on your dreams, don't let your dreams die, but also be really passionate about things that you're passionate about, and somehow that has a way of coming to fruition in the future. So really invest in what you can, invest in yourself now, invest in your dreams and your passions, and they're gonna take you somewhere. So I really felt like that was a really big takeaway for me. So yeah, basically in conclusion, I really wanted to get other people's opinions, because it's not just about me and what I think about the book and what I think about the whole scandal situation. I really wanted to get feedback from you and what you think, on what other people out there think about situations like this. So it made me think of a term that we use in accounting. I'm an accountant by profession. You know, it's the phrase due diligence, which is also, I believe, used in other professions too, but coming from an accounting background, due diligence and how we actually do that. So basically due diligence is an investigation or an audit into an individual or a corporation, basically to confirm facts before, like to investigate facts, to confirm facts about that individual situation. You know, especially in a financial situation, in a financial setup, you're talking about how you know, you want to, it's like almost like doing a background check on this person to see how stable they are financially and otherwise. But it's basically, yeah, like before you go into you know, doing transactions with people, that you do a due diligence investigation. And I was really thinking about how often we actually do that when it comes to authors, and what are your views on that? Like, would you read this book knowing all that you know? And what I would advise you to do is, before you comment, or before you, as you're thinking about it, I would really encourage you to read the book. I mean, what am I saying? I would really encourage you to watch the video of the whole story being explained as to what exactly happened with Delia and her husband. But if you knew what you knew, so I was challenging myself to say, if I knew everything about their story beforehand, would I still have gone ahead and bought the book? Number one, in light of, you know, having heard so much about the book and really wanting to have bought it. If I had heard about the whole scandal beforehand, would I have bought the book? And would I have read the book if I had found out that, if I'd heard what had happened after I was given the book, would I still have gone ahead and read it? Or would I have been like, nope, that author is cancelled? What exactly in your books would be something that you feel that would be way too much for me to go ahead and support that author? And I think, if I'm being completely honest, I think if I had heard about the scandal beforehand, before I had, you know, gone ahead and really gotten invested in the book, and I probably would not have read it, because it comes quite close to home. It, you know, touches on a lot of different things. I mean, there's a very, very big and deeper discussion to be had. It's not something that you just would talk about in a few minutes like I have here, and make a drastic decision. There's so many deeper discussions that come from this whole concept. You know, there's a lot of things that we know about. There's the white savior complex. There is you know, the whole colonialism aspect of it, especially because this was many, many years ago that Delia and her husband had come, when those things were still quite a big thing in our country and in Africa in general. You know, we know Linton Lies, Barbie Savior, we know the stories. We know what it's like for people, particularly Caucasians, who have come to Africa, who have come to Zambia, and you know, they have, it's almost as though they wanted to have the whole experience of, you know, Africa is beautiful aside from the people, and you know, they want to appreciate the beauty in nature, but they don't appreciate that the people are a really big part of the community and a really big part of what makes the land what it is. And it's, you know, it's a really big discussion, like I said, and I wouldn't want to support that in any form. You know, seeing people as people is one thing that's really important to me, and you know, things like racism and stuff like that don't have a place. And but there's, you know, obviously the question, you know, they came here to, and they were like trying to protect the environment, and there's that other aspect, you know, even as Zambians we do want to protect nature, and we want to conserve, and we want to protect animals from being poached and things like that, but how far does that go? What if people take things into their own hands instead of letting the law do what it does best? It's a whole big discussion, honestly, and I don't want to, I know I've gone even further than I actually expected to, but it's just something that really made me think about how often, and if you're completely honest, how often do you actually do a due diligence investigation on an author? And is there anything that you would find that you feel, if you found out about an author, you would cancel their books, you would not want to support them? Like, how far does it actually go? I know that there's a number of Zambians that I've seen, and other people who have said, who already said, you know what, I can't believe this has happened, because there was a TikTok that was going viral, and lots of people heard about this story about Delia and her husband, and a lot of people actually were, you know, saying how they wouldn't buy the book, they wouldn't support her, and yeah, it really just made me think quite a lot. Having said all that, there is a movie that is being based on the book, and honestly, when I was reading the book, I remember saying I would love to see this on I would love to see the movie, if there ever was to be a movie. And you know, it's a book that was picked by Reese Witherspoon and her book club, Reese's book club, which I'm a part of. Well, I've got the app and it's basically, you know, Reese Witherspoon is my gal, you know, I love her so much, and she has been actually the one of the main producers of the movie. And so I was really excited, you know, I was really excited to hear that the movie was coming out after having read the book, because it was actually a really, like, author aside, it's a really beautiful book in my opinion, and I was really excited to see how it would play out. However, now I'm a little bit conflicted, because I'm like, I really want to see the movie, but I don't want to support like, I don't know if I want to support the author and so on. But if I'm being completely honest, because you know, transparency is key sometimes, I am actually going to see the movie, because when it comes out, I would love to see it. I just want to see how it plays out, how the story is brought to light, because the author also has a lot of input into the production, and she knows what kind of movie she wants it to be. From what I've seen from the trailer though, it doesn't look too promising. I know that as we know, the movie often tends to not portray the book in a good light. It tends to let the book down, and I honestly, I sort of see that happening from what I've seen with the trailer, because they made the girl too clean. Like, that's the bottom line. Kaya in the book, you know, she's grown up in the marsh. She is, you know, she's quite dirty, she's not really well taken care of, and in the trailer she's like this clean gal, like she looks like she just chose to live in the marsh, and she has a nice little house and I'm like, that's not how the book is portrayed at all. So I really hope, like, when the trailer came out, there was a lot of people in the comments saying, like, listen, this is not how the girl is portrayed, this is not what the girl would look like living in the marsh and whatever, but we'll see. Like, hopefully they've taken some of that into consideration as the movie is still in production, and that they make it more realistic. But I'm actually quite looking forward to see what the movie is like. Yeah, that is all I'm going to say on this book. Yeah, so please do let me know, what are your thoughts? Like I said, due diligence on authors, yay or nay. Cancel culture on books and authors. What are your opinions? What do you think? Would you read this book? Like, once you've watched the other video explaining the whole scandal, knowing that information and knowing about the author, what would you say? Would you still want to read this book? If if we never knew anything about this author and whatever, I would definitely recommend reading the book, because I actually do like it, and I would definitely read it again. And I probably will at some point, because I own the book. I hope you enjoyed this book review. It has gone on for quite a lot longer than I expected, and so I'm gonna sign off here, and I hope to see you again in another video. Bye now.